I'd like to be a queen of people's hearts.
The funeral of Diana, Princess of Wales, was a profound emotional experience for millions of people throughout the world. It was a unique celebration for a unique person, a vast memorial to someone whose life blew away the conventions of the age, and whose death finally brought home to so many people just how much her life had meant to them, how much they loved her. On this most emotive day, David Dimbleby described the scenes at Westminster Abbey.
The coffin with the royal standard and 3 wreaths of white lilies. This cortege is now halfway along the Mall, and still as it goes, silence from the mourners watching, the million who've come here to London, tears as it goes past. The Duke of Edinburgh on the left, Prince William, Charles Spencer, the brother in the centre, Prince Harry, and the Prince of Wales on the right.
We are gathered here in Westminster Abbey to give thanks for the life of Diana, Princess of Wales, to commend her soul to Almighty God, and to seek his comfort for all who mourn.
Diana was the very essence of compassion, of duty, of style, of beauty. All over the world, she was a symbol of selfless humanity, a standard-bearer for the rights of the truly downtrodden, a very British girl who transcended nationality, someone with a natural nobility who was classless, and who proved in the last year that she needed no royal title to continue to generate her particular brand of magic. It is a point to remember that of all the ironies about Diana, perhaps the greatest was this: a girl given the name of the ancient goddess of hunting was, in the end, the most hunted person of the modern age. I would like to end by thanking God for the small mercies he's shown us at this dreadful time. for taking Diana at her most beautiful and radiant, and when she had joy in her private life. Above all, we give thanks for the life of a woman I'm so proud to be able to call my sister, the unique, the complex, the extraordinary and irreplaceable Diana, whose beauty, both internal and external, will never be extinguished from our minds.
Diana's body was laid to rest on an island in a lake at Althorpe, her family home in Northamptonshire, a place she held in great affection. Moira Stewart looks back on Diana's early life.
Lady Diana Spencer was born into the aristocracy. She was one of 3 daughters of Earl Spencer, whose family had served the British monarchy since the 16th century. She was brought up at the family's home in Norfolk, amidst all the traditions that go with an aristocratic background. She was surrounded by beautiful things. Her schooling was the best money could buy.
She was a very shy girl when she first came to Westheath, shy with adults. Not with her friends, I don't think. I mean, she was always one of the girls. She was shy with adults until she got to know them.
My years at Westheath were certainly very happy ones indeed. I made many friends who I often see, and in spite of what Miss Rudge and my other teachers may have thought at the time, I did actually learn something. Though you would never have known by my O-level results.
She was familiar with the life of the great estates, the hunting, the weekend shooting parties, and it was in that scene here at Althorpe that Charles first set eyes on her. She was in her early teens. Earl Spencer remembered it well.
They first met, I think, at my home, at Althorpe, a few years ago. Because Prince Charles was a great friend of my elder daughter, Sarah, who's now very happily married. But he was a great friend of hers, and he came to stay with her once, and he met Diana there. And always loved children, yes. Very good with people. She loved little children particularly, ever since she was a little child herself.
When she left finishing school in Switzerland, Diana set out to find a job. As her father said, she was very fond of children, and by a stroke of luck, and with a little help from her friends, she was taken on as a part-time nursery teacher at a school in West London.
Well, it was through friends. I wanted to teach children, and they said, why not come along? So I first started off doing afternoons, and then I took over the mornings and did whole days. But I only worked 3 days a week at kindergarten, and the other 2 I looked after American baby boy, which nobody seems to realise. It was very special to me.
London life for Diana was much like that of most of her friends. A flat in Knightsbridge and weekends in the country, where in fact it really all began. Diana's parents rented a house from the Queen on the Sandringham estate. It was quite close to the royal residence itself, so when the royal family assembled for their annual holidays there, it was natural that the Spencer family should be invited for picnics and shooting parties. Diana remembered one occasion well.
It was 1977 that Charles came to stay as a friend of my sister Sarah's for a shoot. We sort of met in a ploughed field.
The next time they met, just a few months later, was at a party on board Britannia. Charles invited Diana for a 10-day cruise round Scotland. It was obvious that she was more than just another escort. At Clarence House, meanwhile, the romance was being helped along from an unexpected quarter. Prince Charles had always been the Queen Mother's favourite grandchild. He relied greatly on her advice and guidance. And the Queen Mother's great and lifelong friend was Lady Fermoy, who happened to be Diana's grandmother. The 2 ladies plotted, so the story goes, in the nicest possible way to bring their respective grandchildren together. It worked. Diana's name was soon being linked with Charles, but was she just another of his many girlfriends? From the lady herself, a discreet silence.
Lady Diana?
We thought it was going to be announced on his 32nd birthday, but there wasn't, and he told reporters yesterday that it may be coming soon. Have you any comment to make about that?
Lady Diana?
No comment all round. Did you have a good weekend, though?
Then suddenly it was official.
The couple who kept a secret for 3 weeks, Prince Charles and Lady Diana Spencer, talk about falling in love and the moment they decided to marry. Lady Diana says she's blissfully happy, and the future king says he's positively delighted.
We're very happy and very proud and very pleased it's all resolved. And I think we both feel enormously proud of Diana, that she's taking on such a big responsibility. And she's also a great giver. You know, she's a very generous kind of person. You know, she wants to give rather than take. And I think that's the most important of all, don't you?
So the weeks of hide-and-seek with the press were over. The crowds gathered outside Buckingham Palace, hoping to catch a glimpse of the couple. At a press conference at Buckingham Palace, the Prince and Princess faced the cameras for the first time together. Diana was proudly wearing her diamond and sapphire engagement ring. Diana was asked if it had been a strain carrying out a courtship without anyone knowing.
Yes, it has, but I think anyone in the position we've been in would feel pressure and everything. But it's been worthwhile, every bit of it.
Of course, the Prince has been in this position all his life. It was something that was entirely new to you, of course.
Yes, but I hope I coped all right. I'm still around, anyway.
I think everyone's full of admiration for the way you did cope, if I may say so.
What about the proposal, Your Royal Highness? How did that come about?
Well, I asked Diana before she went to Australia, 2 or 3 days before, because I thought it'd be a good idea that, apart from anything else, if she went to Australia, she could then think about it, and if she didn't like the idea, she could say she didn't, or if she did, she could say that. But in fact, you actually said
yes, quite promptly.
Before you went to Australia?
Yes.
And then we had to sit on it for 3 weeks.
Must have been an agonising 3 weeks. Did you speak at all? I mean, the phone lines must have been pretty busy between here and Australia.
Yes, we tried, but it was quite difficult because I think there was a certain amount of press interest there, although they never actually found you, did they?
No.
But I rang up on one occasion and I said, can I speak? And they said, no, we're not taking any calls. So I said, well, is the Prince of Wales speaking? How do I know it's the Prince of Wales? Came back a reply. I said, well, you don't, but I am, in a little rage. And I mean, eventually I got the number because they were staying somewhere else. But they said, oh, no, the phones are tapped or something, which I found highly unlikely.
Do you find it a very daunting experience that yesterday you were a nanny looking after children, now you're about to marry the Prince of Wales, and one day you would, in all likelihood, be Queen? It's a tremendous change for someone, if I may say, of 19 to make all of a sudden, the transition.
It is, but I've had a small run-up to it all in the last 6 months. And next to Prince Charles, I know I can't go wrong. He's there with me.
For a previously unknown nursery school teacher, life now was becoming impossible. She couldn't move out of doors without a posse of photographers following her wherever she went. When they went out together in public for the first time, the crowd was almost hysterical. Once again, the Queen Mother came to the rescue. "Come and live with me," she said, at Clarence House, her well-guarded home in the heart of London. In these beautiful and historic surroundings, Diana had her first taste of what it was like to be truly royal, and got some helpful hints from a former queen herself on the role that lay before her. "500 million people around the globe watched the ceremony live.
Diana Frances.
I, Diana Frances.
Take thee, Charles Philip Arthur George.
Take thee, Philip Charles Arthur George.
To my wedded husband.
To my wedded husband.
And so the 20-year-old bride drove off from St Paul's through the streets of London to an uncertain future. After all, there's no handbook on how to be royal. It can only be learnt by trial and error. That was what Diana now set out to do. It was plain from the start that this royal marriage was going to be different, and the crowds seemed to sense that as they waited for the couple to come out onto the balcony at Buckingham Palace. A kiss on the lips in public was by any royal standards sensational. The royal wedding was a very public event, witnessed by hundreds of millions of people all over the world. Unfortunately for the prince and princess, it didn't stop there. The romance and the honeymoon that followed had caught the public imagination, and the media responded with almost hysterical enthusiasm. For the Princess of Wales, the first photo call at Balmoral was a foretaste of the kind of press attention she would have to live with for life. For example, how had they enjoyed the television coverage of their wedding?
Is that BBC or ITV speaking? It's very good. Marvelous.
The new royal life now confronting Diana was awesome enough by any standards. For a shy 20-year-old, it must have been daunting in the extreme. Windsor Castle and the ceremonies there throughout the year symbolised the world she was now entering. The formal rituals of state, the glittering displays of wealth and status. Not much chance here to break out, do your own thing, or even relax, and a very long way from Sloane Square and her flatmates in town. But relief was soon on the way. Charles set his heart on buying and renovating Highgrove House in Gloucestershire. It's a 9-bedroom Georgian mansion with 350 acres and a walled garden. Here the couple could really relax away from the court. The princess set about furnishing the place, turning it into a home for herself, the prince, and in no time at all, her first child, Prince William, born in a London hospital in June 1982, to Prince Charles's undisguised delight.
Tired.
Are you both happy?
13 hours, a long time.
Does he look like you?
Does
he look like you, sir?
No, he's lucky enough not to.
How do you feel,
it's
sir?
It's a bit difficult to tell at the moment.
How do you feel?
I'm obviously relieved and delighted. It's marvellous. It's rather a grown-up thing, I find. Rather a shock to my system.
Prince William's birth and the pregnancy that went before it kept Diana's engagements to a minimum in those early days. But as soon as William was old enough to travel safely, Prince Charles was ready to carry out a promise he'd made, to show his wife some of the Commonwealth countries he knew so well, and to let the people see her. From the beginning, Diana was determined to give her children the freedom she had had as a child, despite the pressures imposed by Buckingham Palace. On her first official royal tour to Australia, she insisted that William came too. When Charles was a baby, the Queen had left him in the hands of a nanny for 9 months, while she and Prince Philip went on a Commonwealth tour. Diana was having none of that. If she had to be away for any length of time, the children went with her. But this breakthrough in royal family life wasn't achieved without a struggle. Diana had to take a firm stand with the palace to make sure William was there, and it was an argument she won, giving her increasing confidence to stand up for herself, to establish herself as a public figure in her own right, even if William had to be reluctantly handed back to his nanny while they went on with the rest of the formalities. And at least Charles was there to help. For example, as the princess was interviewed by Australian children on the School of the Air.
Good morning, this is the Alice Springs School of the Air. Today we have 2 very special guests in the studio, their Royal Highnesses, the Prince and Princess of Wales. Your Royal Highnesses, may I first welcome both of you to the school.
Stephen Beasy out at Ayers Rock. Stephen is in transition, which means that he's about 5 years old. The question there was, has Prince William a little bike yet?
Sorry.
Yes.
Stephen, he hasn't got one yet. We think he's a bit small. But perhaps when he's your age and size, we might get him one.
Thank you very much. Jamie Smith out at Ayers Rock, you have a question. Does Prince William have a favourite toy?
Jamie, he loves his koala bear he's got. But he hasn't got anything particular. He just likes something with a bit of noise.
It's a plastic whale which throws things out the top.
He got a plastic whale that throws things out the top, little balls.
Thank you.
At the palace's request, the Australians had put the emphasis of the tour on youth. The princess herself had asked specifically that she should see as many children as possible at the various functions laid on. The effect, in contrast to some of the stuffier tours of the past, was to give the visit great informality and charm. Back in Britain, Diana's list of public engagements began to grow ever more demanding. Here she was now in a world where everything she wore, the food she ate, the entertainment laid on, everything about her was the best money could buy. Add to that the adoration of the crowds, the obvious affection that the public had for her, and it looked like a perfect world. Yet there was a price to be paid. The young Princess of Wales had everything except the freedom she'd been used to before her royal marriage.
Mr. Speaker of the House of Representatives, Mr. President of the House of Councillors, Mr. Prime Minister, ladies and gentlemen, konnichiwa.
The princess obviously had to attend functions and meet people with whom she had little in common. The problem was continually having to look as if she was enjoying it. It wasn't always easy when you didn't understand the language and there was another reception with another speech tomorrow and tomorrow and tomorrow. Even on some of the royal fun outings, there were problems. Polo, for example. At one particular polo match near Windsor, Diana had had enough. For reasons never explained publicly, she left before the end of the match, apparently in tears. Charles had a word of consolation, saw his wife safely to her car and went on playing, which left the press to speculate wildly on the ostensible marital difficulties the incident seemed to imply. The princess's tastes were different. She loved dancing, for example. Charles wasn't so enthusiastic, despite his brave attempts whenever the couple had to perform in public. The princess came into her own in the evening, at a film premiere, the ballet, a rock concert or a theatrical first night. She began increasingly to attend this sort of function by herself and enjoy it. Even when the couple did go out together to a function his wife enjoyed, Prince Charles sometimes couldn't conceal his boredom, nor did he make any concession on dress, turning up in his usual double-breasted suit and tie. One thing was certain. The princess could draw consolation from the world of fashion. Here she really was in her element. The princess brought a style and elegance to the royal wardrobe that was quite unlike anything that had gone before.
She's beautiful.
Why was the princess such a hit in this most cynical and world-weary city? Perhaps it was because she was still only 24 years old. And here she was, being feted by the head of the world's greatest superpower, and taking her place among the leading figures of the day on both sides of the Atlantic. Even in Hollywood, superstar success seldom comes quite so young. Whatever the reason, an invitation to the White House reception was the hottest ticket in town.
Princess, Mr. Travolta? Would you like me to? What sort of dance would you choose for preference?
Oh, something of her choice.
Nancy and I are deeply honored to welcome the Prince and Princess of Wales to the White House. Permit me to add our congratulations to Prince Charles on his birthday, just 5 days away, and express also our great happiness that we have been able to have this affair with Princess Diane here on her first trip to the United States, that we should be able to share in that first trip.
The princess was now being projected as one of Britain's great national assets. She was the one everyone wanted to see, the most talked about, the most popular, the most photographed woman in the world. Her problem was to make sure she wasn't exploited beyond the boundaries she herself set. It wasn't an easy course to follow. The adulation that accompanied her every move was a temptation to those who wanted to bolster British exports to enhance the country's image. But that really was Charles's job, and it wasn't easy for him continually being upstaged by his glamorous wife. There's no question that these royal events, this was a visit to Hong Kong, gave the princess increasing confidence. Those who followed the tours could see the change in her, from the rather camera-shy, diffident young woman to someone who needed less and less confidence-building from her husband on these official occasions as the years passed by. But here again, the fact that the princess was obviously beginning to enjoy her public role, that she was getting to grips with the idea that she would one day be the royal consort, that she no longer always needed Prince Charles at her side, was interpreted in numerous books and articles as a sign that her marriage was in trouble.
Back home in Britain, Diana's engagements were now almost exclusively solo affairs, and they were different. Members of the royal family had been patrons of charities before, but Diana altered the whole concept, breaking down barriers, holding hands with AIDS patients, touching people, without any of the formality of previous royal visits. She found herself drawn to people who were on the margins of society, drug addicts, the homeless. Battered this, battered that, as she later put it. She seemed to find an affinity with the dispossessed, the disadvantaged.
Thanks so much.
If I give you a discount on the...
Sometimes her comments seemed to be about the pain in her own life as much as the suffering of those she was tending.
Ladies and gentlemen, I have it on very good authority that the quest for perfection our society demands can leave the individual gasping for breath at every turn. From early childhood, many had felt they were expected to be perfect, but didn't feel they had the right to express their true feelings to those around them. Feelings of guilt, of self-revulsion, and low personal esteem, creating in them a compulsion to dissolve like a disprin and disappear.
But there was no dissolving and disappearing for Diana. She continued with her charity work. One or two observers commented on how thin and drawn she'd become, but very few knew she had an eating disorder. Diana believed that her marriage was being undermined by the re-emergence of Camilla Parker Bowles, a long-standing friend of Prince Charles. There were 3 of us in the marriage, she later said, so it was a bit crowded. On a visit to the Taj Mahal, one of the world's supreme monuments to love, Diana's pose was deliberately symbolic. She was isolated in a loveless marriage and felt a deep sense of betrayal. Diana's bitterness was exposed in the pages of a book by Andrew Morton. It gave voice to the silences and discretion the royal family traditionally lived behind. She said she'd hoped the book would give people a better understanding. The papers had a field day. The storm unleashed by the publication of Andrew Morton's book began to take its toll on official events. This was the royal tour of Korea. It was a public relations disaster. The glum faces and stony expressions said it all. It was now becoming clear that the situation couldn't go on. No further pretense was possible.
I wish to inform the House that Buckingham Palace are at this moment issuing the following statement. It reads as follows. It is announced from Buckingham Palace that with regret, the Prince and Princess of Wales have decided to separate. Their Royal Highnesses have no plans to divorce, and their constitutional positions are unaffected. This decision has been reached amicably, and they will both continue to participate fully in the upbringing of their children. Their Royal Highnesses will continue to carry out full and separate programmes of public engagements and will from time to time attend family occasions and national events together.
With the failure of her marriage now officially announced, any hope that press interest in her activities might ease off was soon dispelled. At a charity lunch, she surprised everyone by announcing her withdrawal from most of her official activities.
When I started my public life 12 years ago, I understood the media might be interested in what I did. I realized then their attention would inevitably focus on both our private and public lives. But I was not aware of how overwhelming that attention would become, nor the extent to which it would affect both my public duties and my personal life in a manner that's been hard to bear.
Diana's attempts to withdraw from public life made little difference to the media. The royal drama was taking on a momentum of its own. Secret tape recordings of leading players were publicly accessible. To try to set the record straight, at Highgrove, Prince Charles agreed to tell his side of the story in an interview with Jonathan Dimbleby. On the day Prince Charles confessed adultery, Diana made a high-profile, highly glamorous appearance and later decided to tell her story.
The most daunting aspect was the media attention, because my husband and I, we were told when we got engaged that the media would go quietly, and it didn't. And then when we were married, they said it would go quietly, and it didn't. And then it started to focus very much on me. And I seemed to be on the front of a newspaper every single day, which is an isolating experience. And the higher the media place you, is the bigger the drop. And I was very aware of that. But then here was a situation which hadn't ever happened before in history, in the sense that the media were everywhere. And here was a fairy story that everybody wanted to work. And so it was isolating, but it was also a situation where you couldn't indulge in feeling sorry for yourself. You had to either sink or swim.
In 1996, the Prince and Princess were finally divorced. The disaster she wanted to avoid was now upon them. She lost her title of Her Royal Highness, but she was still anxious to find a suitable role for herself.
Thank you. I'd like to be an ambassador for this country. I'd like to represent this country abroad. As I have all this media interest, let's not just sit in this country and be battered by it. Let's take them, these people, out and to represent this country and the good qualities of it abroad. When I go abroad, we've got 60 to 90 photographers just from this country coming with me. So let's use it in a productive way to help this country.
It was one of the many ironies in Diana's life that she never did become an official ambassador for Britain, though weeks before her death, discussions were underway to provide her with a new, positive role. Often, for example on a visit to Imran Khan, who was an opposition MP in Pakistan, she was accused of political naivety. Her most recent cause was against the manufacture of anti-personnel landmines. She made trips to Bosnia and Angola, continually drawing attention to the human misery caused by the millions of mines left behind, unseen and undetected, long after conflicts were resolved.
First day I was in Quito.
Again, some people saw this as straying into the political arena. Most of the public saw nothing untoward in Diana's campaign. But it won her some enemies in Westminster.
Ma'am, the government minister's home has said you're a loose cannon by supporting this campaign. Do you have any reaction to that?
Well, Jenny, I'm only trying to highlight a problem that's going on all around the world. That's all.
It's been said, though, that you're aligning yourself with Labour policy. Do you think that's wise?
Labour? I don't know what you're talking about. I don't know what you're...
We need to move on.
Thank you. Thank you
very much.
Despite the criticisms, Diana's landmine campaign was beginning to pay off. Many countries began to rethink their policies in the light of public disquiet generated by the publicity. Diana's ability to change the lives of people she met was a quality she shared with the late Mother Teresa. Their relationship was warm and sympathetic. After the years of turmoil, it seemed that Diana was reaching a new, more confident public stance. She was learning to cope with an independent role on the world stage.
$10,000. At 10,000, 11,000, thank you, madam, 12,000.
The gesture that emphasized her increasing detachment from the past came in June 1997, when Christie's auctioned off 79 ball gowns and dresses that had featured on so many front pages over the years. Her favorite causes, including cancer and AIDS, benefited by some £3.5 million. But despite Diana's attempts to create a serious, meaningful role for herself, the media, specifically the stills photographers, remained fascinated by the ordinary details of her daily life. On one occasion, she turned on a photographer, demanding that he hand over his film. When he refused, a passerby pinned him to the wall. It was obvious that Diana's patience with her stalkers was wearing thin.
They've decided that I'm still a project after 15, 16 years that sells well, and they all shout at me, telling me that, oh, come on, Di, look up. If you give us a picture, I can get my children to a better school. And, you know, you can laugh it off, but you get that the whole time. I never encouraged the media. There was a relationship which worked before, but now I can't tolerate it because it's become abusive. And it's harassment. But I don't want to be seen to indulging in self-pity. I'm not.
But privacy was a pipe dream once Diana started to see Dodi Al-Fayed, the son of the owner of Harrods. His family's vast wealth wasn't enough to protect Diana from the huge international interest in their relationship. In Paris, in the early hours of Sunday, the 31st of August, 1997, after a quiet dinner at the Ritz Hotel, the tragic chain of events that led to the fateful crash began. Diana's life was over, but as her body was brought back to lie in St. James's Palace, the legacy began to unfold. No one could have foreseen what was to happen next. The people's desire to pay tribute seemed endless. I'd like to be queen of people's hearts, she'd said. The days that followed her death proved that without any shadow of a doubt, That indeed was what she'd become.
Can't describe it. You've got to come up here and see it on television, but you can't. Nothing can put into how I'm feeling while I'm up here.
Well, she's special because she brings light to the world.
She did what she cared about, and she loved everyone.
I wish she was alive to do many more for the country, you know, but sadly God decided to take her, so we just had to pray for her, you know.
No one who knew Diana will ever forget her. Millions of others who never met her, but felt they knew her, will remember her. I, for one, believe there are lessons to be drawn from her life and from the extraordinary and moving reaction to her death. I share in your determination to cherish her memory. This is also an opportunity for me, on behalf of my family, and especially Prince Charles and William and Harry, to thank all of you who have brought flowers, sent messages, and paid your respects in so many ways to a remarkable person. May those who died rest in peace, and may we, each and every one of us, thank God for someone who made many, many people happy.